On June 13, 2026, the U.S. Central Command released its weekly operational update on engagements with Houthi missile and drone attacks in the Red Sea theater. The update noted, with measured bureaucratic language, that American forces had successfully intercepted 19 of 22 incoming threats during the preceding 7 days. 3 missiles were not intercepted. The update characterized the intercept rate as consistent with operational objectives. Hold on to that phrase. Consistent with operational objectives. Because those 3 missiles that were not intercepted struck a commercial vessel in international waters, killing 2 crew members, injuring 4 others, and sending the vessel's insurer into a claim process that will ultimately cost more than the annual operating budget of the entire Houthi missile program. And all 3 of those missiles were supplied, manufactured, and guided by Iran. 3 missiles, 2 deaths, and an intercept rate that the official statement called consistent with operational objectives. These 2 things, consistent with objectives and 3 missiles through your screen, cannot both be true without someone having defined the objectives in a way that quietly abandons the goal they were supposed to represent. And today I am going to show you how Iran's math has exposed the limit of what American air defense can actually promise. Right now, CNN is reporting the attack as a humanitarian tragedy and focusing on the victims' families. Fox News is asking whether the Biden-era Iran policy enabled Houthi capability growth. The BBC is covering the disruption to global shipping economics. All of these are legitimate framings. None of them is asking the right question. The right question is this: has the persistent operational reality of Houthi and Iranian missile campaigns against defended targets revealed a structural ceiling on what air defense intercept rates can actually achieve? And is that ceiling lower than the strategic deterrence the system is supposed to provide? In the next 20 minutes, I am going to walk you through the math, explain why it matters far beyond the Red Sea theater, show you how Iran has engineered around the ceiling it found. Strategic winner is when 3 missiles get through on a week that the official statement calls a success. The framework I want to apply is what I call the deterrence math problem, a condition that arises when a defensive system's achievable intercept rate is genuinely high, but not high enough to deter a well-calibrated adversary from accepting the statistical cost of attacking, because the adversary has priced the probability of penetration into its strategic calculus from the beginning. Let me explain this from first principles with an analogy you will understand immediately. Imagine you are a bank and you have an excellent security system that catches 85 to 90% of robbery attempts. That sounds impressive, but if a criminal organization knows your rate in advance, they do not try to beat the security system. They simply factor the 15 to 20% success probability into their business model. They attempt 5 robberies, expecting to succeed in 1. They are not trying to defeat your security. They are doing statistical arbitrage against it. Iran is doing the same thing with American air defense. It has spent years measuring the actual intercept rate of Patriot and naval systems against its missiles and drones. It has calibrated its salvo sizes to ensure that some fraction of its attacks statistically penetrate, regardless of how good the defense is. And then it builds its strategic goals around that fraction. The historical anchor for this framework is the Falklands War of 1982 and the performance of the British air defense screen against Argentine air attack. British ships in the South Atlantic were defended by Sea Dart and Sea Wolf missile systems, supported by Harrier fighter aircraft. These were credible, capable systems. The Argentine Air Force lost significant aircraft to these defenses, but the Argentine attack strategy, low-level approach, high-speed delivery, accepting aircraft losses as the cost of doing business, was designed not to defeat the British air defense system, but to achieve statistical penetration at a rate that generated enough ship losses to impose unacceptable political costs on the British government. Argentina lost the war, but it sank 6 British ships, damaged many more, and came close on several occasions to the threshold of losses that would have forced a British withdrawal. The deterrence math problem is this: even a good air defense screen does not deter an adversary that has accepted the cost ratio of its losses and calibrated its strategy around the statistical performance of your defense. Iran has studied the Falklands lesson and much more recent lessons with the same analytical intensity. There are 6 pieces of evidence that Iran has found and is systematically exploiting the ceiling in American air defense math. Walk through each one. Number 1, the salvo architecture of Iranian-supplied Houthi missile attacks has evolved specifically to optimize penetration probability, rather than to maximize total missiles launched. Early Houthi attacks used single missiles or pairs, which allowed American intercept systems to engage sequentially with high confidence. Over the past 18 months, the attack architecture has shifted to mixed salvos of 5 to 12 weapons simultaneously, a mix of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and loitering munitions. The mix is not random. The ballistic missiles stress the Patriot system because of their speed and descent angle. The cruise missiles stress the naval SM-2 system because of their low altitude and maneuverability. The loitering munitions, circling and waiting for a gap, stress the radar system's tracking capacity because they require continuous monitoring. The simultaneous 3-axis attack is designed to saturate the cognitive and technical bandwidth of the intercept system rather than to overwhelm it numerically. It is precision engineering of the stress pattern that generates the statistical hole through which the penetrating weapons pass. This is not luck. This is math. Number 2, Iran has been collecting operational intercept data through its Houthi proxy campaign and using it to refine the salvo architecture in real time. This is the element that most public analysis treats as background noise when it is actually the primary strategic signal. Every Houthi attack that is intercepted generates observable data for Iran: which missile type was intercepted, at what range, with what intercept method, with what timing relative to the salvo sequence. Over hundreds of attacks across 2+ years, Iran has accumulated a massive operational data set on American and Allied intercept performance under real operational conditions, not exercise conditions. This data set is being used to refine missile guidance parameters, salvo timing, and approach trajectory selection in ways that progressively optimize penetration probability. Iran is running a live operational experiment on American air defense performance, funded by Houthi attacks, and the experimental data is feeding directly into weapons development and tactics refinement. Okay? This is not the same as a country that is losing missile exchanges with American interceptors. This is a country that is learning from them. Number 3. The specific missiles that penetrated American defenses in the Red Sea theater have disproportionately been the Iranian-supplied Quds cruise missile variants, not the ballistic missiles. This is significant because it reveals where the ceiling in American air defense math actually sits. The Patriot system's historical performance against ballistic missiles is genuinely impressive. Intercept rates in the high 80s to low 90s in operational environments, according to Israeli operational experience documented in IDF after-action reports on Iron Dome and Patriot combined operations during the October 2023 conflict. Against cruise missiles, low altitude, maneuvering, smaller radar cross-section, the performance envelope is materially less robust. The cruise missile threat is not a new problem, but Iran has been methodically engineering its cruise missile capability toward the specific performance parameters that degrade Patriot's intercept probability. Lower altitude, longer low-altitude flight path to minimize radar acquisition time, final stage maneuver to complicate fire control solutions. Iran knows where the ceiling is because it has been measuring it from the outside, strike by strike. Number 4, the 3% to 15% penetration rate that current operational results suggest, depending on the specific salvo type and defensive configuration upgrade. Integration is not trivially manageable when the targets are commercial vessels with civilian crews in an international waterway that supports 11% of global trade. The deterrence math problem becomes concrete in the following way. If Iran-supplied missiles have a 12% statistical penetration rate against defended targets, and if Houthi forces are launching salvos at an average frequency of 3 times per week. The expected number of penetrating impacts per month is a calculable figure that insurance actuaries, shipping companies, and commercial operators can run as a business decision. And the business decision they have reached, routing shipping around the Cape of Good Hope rather than through the Suez Canal, adding 2 weeks and 20% to shipping costs, is itself a strategic win for Iran that does not require a single ballistic missile to reach its target. The 3% that gets through is enough to make the other 97% strategically effective through deterrence. This is deterrence math working backwards. The threat of the missile that penetrates does more strategic work than the missile itself. Number 5, the American operational commitment to defend commercial shipping in the Red Sea has created a resource allocation problem that Iran has engineered deliberately. Defending commercial shipping is not the same as defending a military asset. Commercial shipping does not have hardened crew quarters, damage control teams trained to military standards, or redundant navigation systems. A missile hit that a military vessel would survive with crew safety and mission continuation may be catastrophic for a commercial vessel with a civilian crew and no damage control capability. This means the effective intercept rate required to make commercial shipping safe is substantially higher than the intercept rate required to protect military assets. To protect commercial shipping, you need to achieve something approaching a 100% intercept rate. Samsa means because commercial crews are not trained to survive partial defense failures. Iran knows this. The gap between the 90% range intercept rate that the system can achieve and the near 100% rate required to keep commercial shipping in the Red Sea is the gap that Iran is exploiting, not with the 3 missiles that get through, but with the commercial and economic consequences of the 3 missiles that get through. Number 6, the American air defense commitment in the Red Sea consumes resources, missiles, crew hours, ship maintenance cycles, intelligence bandwidth that are diverted from other priorities. I have described this in other contexts in terms of Patriot inventory depletion. The naval dimension of this problem is equally severe. The Arleigh Burke-class destroyers conducting Red Sea air defense operations are burning through SM-2 and SM-6 interceptor missiles at rates that their magazines were not designed to sustain in long-duration operations, while simultaneously experiencing accelerated wear on propulsion systems, radar systems, and hull structures from sustained operational tempo in confined, salt-intensive waters. The ships that are managing the Red Sea air defense commitment are ships that are not available for Pacific contingency planning, Atlantic undersea warfare operations, or the maintenance cycles required to sustain long-term readiness. Iran's proxy campaign has achieved a sustained, real-time diversion of American naval resources from every other strategic priority without firing a single missile at an American military asset directly. The cost ratio is, once again, devastatingly asymmetric. Now, the strongest counter-argument, the most serious challenge to my analysis, is that an 85 to 90% intercept rate against a sustained missile campaign is, by historical standards, an extraordinary achievement, and that framing it as a failure requires ignoring the baseline. No air defense system in history has achieved anything approaching 100% intercept rates under operational conditions. The Israeli Iron Dome system, often cited as the most successful operational air defense in history, achieved intercept rates in the 90% range against Hamas rockets, but only for rockets targeted at populated areas requiring intercept, not for all rockets launched. The comparison shows that American intercept performance in the Red Sea is genuinely impressive by any historical standard, and that asking for better than what physics and engineering can currently provide is asking for the impossible. Moreover, the alternative, not defending commercial shipping at all, would have catastrophic economic and political consequences far exceeding the current cost. This is a serious and honest argument, but here is what it cannot explain. It cannot explain why the Biden and Trump administrations both have been unable to generate the political consensus required to strike at the Houthi missile production and logistics infrastructure in Yemen at the scale that would actually reduce the launch rate, rather than simply continuing to intercept the missiles that are launched. The military option to significantly degrade Houthi capability exists and has been discussed. The political decision to execute it has not been made on either watch. That gap between military option and political decision is not explained by the technical impressiveness of the intercept rate. It is explained by the deterrence math problem. When your defense is statistically good enough to manage, but not good enough to prevent all casualties, the political cost of escalation to eliminate the threat has to be weighed against an operational status quo that, by official statement, is consistent with operational objectives. The intercept math has defined the political ceiling, not just the technical one. Let me bring everything together. The limit of American air defense math that Iran has revealed is not that the systems are failing in an absolute sense. They are not. The limit is that statistically excellent air defense performance, 90%, 87%, whatever the actual operational figure is not the same as deterrence, and it is not the same as protection when the adversary has designed its strategy around the statistical gap. Iran has found the gap, measured the gap, engineered its weapons around the gap, and is extracting maximum strategic value from the gap without needing to win any individual exchange. The missiles that get through are the signal that the rest are working. The hidden winner in the Red Sea air defense story is not Iran, though Iran is gaining operational intelligence and strategic benefit. The hidden winner is the analytical framework that says air defense is either working or it is not, because that binary framing prevents the more uncomfortable analysis of what working actually means when 3 missiles per week statistically penetrate your screen. The hidden winner is the comfort of the official statement, consistent with operational objectives. That phrase has done more to obscure the actual strategic situation in the Red Sea than any adversary information operation could have achieved. It is a domestically generated cognitive cover for the deterrence math problem. 3 things to watch in the next 48 to 72 hours. First, watch whether American naval assets in the Red Sea request additional resupply of SM-2 or SM-6 missiles. Any such request filed with Military Sea Lift Command will appear eventually in logistics tracking data and is a real-time signal about magazine consumption rates. Second, watch commercial shipping routing decisions by major carriers. Specifically, whether any major operator that briefly returned to Suez routing reverses that decision in response to this week's strike. Third, watch whether Iran's foreign minister makes any public statement about the Red Sea attacks. If Tehran publicly endorses the Houthi strike rather than maintaining its traditional ambiguity, that signals a shift in Iran's assessment of its own escalation management calculus. Your homework is 2 documents. Read the RAND Corporation's 2022 study on the limits of air defense in contested environments, specifically the section on intercept rate ceilings under mixed salvo attacks. Then read the International Maritime Organization's 2025 report on Red Sea shipping disruption and its economic consequences. Put the technical intercept ceiling data next to the shipping disruption economic data and calculate what the 3% that gets through costs in economic terms per dollar of Houthi and Iranian missile expenditure. If the number you calculate is not deeply alarming, bring your calculation to the comments and show me where my math is wrong. Here is the question I want to leave you with. If a defense system that stops 87% of incoming missiles can still fail to deter, can still allow strategic consequences to accumulate, and can still generate an operational status quo that costs the defending side more than it costs the attacker, then what number would deterrence actually require? Is there a number? And if there is not, if the deterrence math problem has no numerical solution, then what does air defense actually guarantee? And what are we paying $4 to $6 million per interceptor to prevent? I will see you in the next one. Let me give you the final analytical depth that completes the picture. The deterrence math problem I have described is not unique to the Red Sea. It is the master framework that explains the strategic environment America is operating in across every theater where it is currently engaged in active air defense operations, the Korean Peninsula, the Gulf, Eastern Europe, through NATO commitments, and potentially the Pacific. Every one of these theaters features an adversary or adversary-aligned force that has studied American air defense performance, calibrated its attack architecture to optimize penetration probability, and is extracting strategic value from the statistical gap that high but not perfect intercept rates inevitably produce. The pattern is not a coincidence. It is a strategic doctrine developed independently by multiple adversaries who have all arrived at the same conclusion. You do not need to defeat American air defense to win against American air defense. You need to find its statistical ceiling, apply consistent pressure against it, and let the cost ratio and the political consequences of the missiles that get through do the strategic work. What Iran has added to this general doctrine is the specific innovation of using the Red Sea operational environment as a live testing range for the ceiling finding process. Every week of Houthi attacks generates Iranian intelligence about American intercept performance that is more operationally valuable than any amount of intelligence collected against exercises, because the intelligence is against real operational systems under real operational stress. Iran is paying Houthi political and material support costs to run an air defense performance study on American systems in a live operational environment. The study results feed directly into the weapons development and tactics programs that would be deployed in a future direct confrontation with American forces in the Gulf. The Red Sea campaign is not primarily about Red Sea shipping. It is a research program, and America is the subject. The final observation is this: the 3 crew members who died when those 3 missiles penetrated the air defense screen this week were not casualties of a failed system. By official metrics, the system was performing within parameters. They were casualties of the gap between what the system can achieve and what deterrence would require it to achieve. A gap that Iran found, engineered around, and is exploiting with systematic precision. Naming that gap honestly, rather than covering it with the phrase consistent with operational objectives, is the first step toward having the serious conversation about whether the system can be redesigned to close it, or whether the gap is an irreducible feature of the physics and economics of missile defense that requires a different strategic approach entirely. And there is one more element that ties everything in this analysis together with precision. The cost ratio that runs through all of my analysis of American strategic vulnerabilities takes its most concentrated form in the deterrence math problem. Consider the following arithmetic. 3 Quds, cruise missiles, penetrated the air defense screen this week. Each missile cost Iran and the Houthis approximately $100,000 to $200,000 in total production and delivery cost. The 3 missiles together destroyed a commercial vessel worth approximately $40 to $60 million, generated a marine casualty insurance claim, disrupted shipping route decisions affecting billions of dollars in annual trade, Shakuni consumed American diplomatic and military resources in response management, and generated global headlines that amplify Iran's image as an actor capable of sustained effectiveness against American defended targets. The cost ratio of Iranian investment to American consequence is not 1 to 4, like the Patriot intercept problem. It is not 1 to 1,000, like the carrier killer problem. It is something closer to 1 to 10,000, when the full economic, political, and strategic consequence chain is properly measured. 3 missiles, 2 deaths, and an official statement that called it consistent with operational objectives. The deterrence math problem is not a technical problem. It is a strategic architecture problem, and Iran has found the architecture ceiling more precisely than any American war game has been willing to publicly acknowledge.